From years of anxiety to warrior and mentor, Bradley Robinson created the Anxiety Project to help you end your anxiety naturally. Let's mold the new you and let's end anxiety together.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Anxiety Project podcast. Welcome to episode 311. I am Brad Robinson. Today, we're diving deep, far down into the depths of the unconscious mind, the part of us that is way more sophisticated than our newer parts of our brain, the prefrontal cortex, the rational parts of the brain. It's way more sophisticated because, well, it's way older than you. I mean, how old are you? Max 100 years old, and this system is millions of years old. So, yeah, it's way more sophisticated than we imagine. Well, and you understand that because you try and control hunger and aggression and sexual drives. These things are no joke. And so we're talking about that today. And if you haven't already, please head on over to the podcast feed and check out the Meditation Mondays. This week, it's all about guilt. Okay, it's really powerful meditation where you sit and you go over a moment of your past where you felt guilty. Maybe it's something that you did to someone, or maybe they didn't catch you, but you're still holding on to this guilty conscience. This meditation will help you address what those feelings are, and it'll map out a way forward to fully release and let go of that heavy burden you're carrying around. So go check that out. I highly recommend it. So today, the unconscious mind, it's this giant iceberg below the surface. We only see that 10%, above the water, but there's this massive, the majority of the iceberg is there under the surface. And that's pretty much the unconscious mind. And if there's a stage and there's a spotlight shining on just a fraction of that stage, everything else on that stage is in darkness, but just that tiny area that you can see and kind of understand. The rest of the theater is the unconscious mind. That's the darkness, and you can shine that spotlight throughout the darkness to better understand who you are. And this is the journey into the unconscious mind. Now, what lurks there? Because, there's this fisherman metaphor running around, I suppose, the self-help sphere of, do you want to be a fisherman, or do you want to be given a fish, or have no fish or be a fisherman, right? It's this idea where it's better to be the person that can catch and know how to catch fish. And also this metaphor stems a little deeper than that, because why fisherman? Well, the fisherman is the person that pulls the things up from the depths. They are the ones that are willing to confront what's lurking down there and to reel them upwards, right? And who knows what's lurking down there? Who knows if you're going to be able to get that food for the tribe, to satisfy your hunger. And food is information because it provides you the energy to actually think cognitively and to be satiated, to actually worry about other things, because starving people are not going to worry about sophisticated things because they're being run by their id impulses of hunger, right? They only can worry about how to survive for the day if they're hungry, let alone worry about more sophisticated matters. So the unconscious mind is a very powerful thing. You can pull up information from its depths, right? That's very useful to understand. You pull up the information from its depths. And when you start to peek your head in there and you shine that spotlight into those areas, who knows what you will unravel from your childhood and what you're like as a human being. But what you can pull up is fear, what you're avoiding in your life. That's unpleasant. That's something that a lot of people want to push down into the depths, or it's their emotions and thoughts, right? The thoughts lead to emotions. A lot of people don't want to recognize what those thoughts even are and even question those thoughts. So they push them down, and your drives lurk in the unconscious mind: sexual, hunger, anger, what you value. A lot of people don't realize that their values stem from what they pay attention to on a day-to-day basis, and they don't realize that. They don't realize that certain behaviors and habits really contribute to the misery that they are experiencing. And then your beliefs are in the unconscious, and that stems from your childhood and your family, and you adopt certain negative beliefs. I'm sure we all do, from somebody. And to understand those negative beliefs is to journey into the unconscious mind. You think, what about this certain situation? Well, I believe this about this certain situation, and that unravels your thinking and the framework of how you're interpreting the situation. Maybe you can interpret that situation differently, right? And that's all part of the self-exploration. And then I love this. Archetypes. Archetypes lurk in the unconscious mind, right? And this is the collective unconscious idea, the collective unconscious. The archetypes are imagistic representations of the proper path forward. That's the hero, the proper path forward, your best bet forward in life. And that hero embodies that spirit. And then there's this other opposite. The opposite to that is the villain, right? That's the self-destruction, hell archetype. That's the satanic archetype, right? And there's, I think the biggest archetypes of those types would be Christ and Satan, right? We all know those ones. We all know what that is. And so, like I said, this is all part of the collective unconscious. And so what does that mean? The collective unconscious. Why, when we're children, why can we watch a Disney movie and understand what this means? But when you really look into it, it's sort of preposterous, right? It's sort of ridiculous what happens in these movies. But when we're children, and even now, we swallow them up, and we get it. It clicks. It makes sense. It resonates. We understand what the images mean without really understanding what they mean. We get it without really analyzing it, why we get it. And so let's analyze today why we understand these images, and this will help you better understand your unconscious mind. And so let's take the image of a dragon, and that's shared cross-culturally, right? This image of this bird of prey, and it makes sense because it's an amalgamation, right? The dragon is this ultra meta predator because it's made up of everything that used to do us in the past, right? It's made up of the bird of prey. It's made up of the it's the serpent. It's the winged serpent, right? It's the snake, and it's the predatory cat, right, with its talons. And so a predatory cat is damn terrifying as it is, let alone something that harnesses all three. That's because if you think about it this way, if you learn how to slay and defeat the monster of all monsters, then a snake or a cat won't seem so dangerous because you've slain this hyper predator, right? And I think that's why we come up with those categories, is because we want to run simulators in our stories of how to defeat the biggest, most scariest, the most intimidating thing in our lives, right? And then everything else in our surroundings won't seem as fearful because, as Jung points out, you want to confront the most terrifying thing in your life. And that bleeds out into all other areas, all other fears, everything else that you're avoiding. That bravery, it snowballs all around you, and it snowballs into all those areas. And so when you fight this dragon, you stretch yourself in all abilities to destroy the thing. And when you destroy the thing, the community rewards you. And that's why it's always represented as the thing that, what would you say? It hides gold. It always accompanies the gold. And that's an interesting thing, because when you destroy that terrible predator that's threatening the community, you as an individual, you strengthen in bravery. That's a treasure. You gain something, as you gain knowledge, wisdom. That's a treasure. Also, the community rewards you. You save the community, and thus you can continue the propagation, I guess you can say, of the species that is you. And also the females you'll become highly desired amongst the females. You'll get the choice of mate, right? And so there's a lot of treasure lurking in something like killing the monster that is threatening the community. It does make sense. But when you pick it apart like that, it's like, oh, it's obvious. But when you watch the movies of the hero slaying the dragon, it's not so obvious. It just makes sense. You enjoy it. You're thrilled. You're on the side of the hero. You're on the edge of your seat. But you don't really understand how real and hyper real that image is. And that's part of the collective unconscious. That's part of the collective. These images of the hero journeying into the unknown to defeat the monster, it speaks universally, because that is the human condition, right? It's the human condition is to venture forward into the unknown, because we are exploratory creatures. That's why it resonates. We're exploratory. We go out into the terrible unknown, new lands, new in the Star Trek Voyagers, right? To boldly go where no one has gone before. It resonates. We understand that. We're on the edge of our seats. We're wondering what Captain Kirk is going to get him and his crew into this week, right? What kind of discoveries? It's always novel, and we tune in every week to find out. And so that's who we are. And when we're kids, we act that out. We whatever tribe you're in, whether they have bows and arrows or swords or armor like knights, or you're like Robin Hood, or you're like a Call of Duty character, an army man going out into the terrible unknown with your guns, it's all the same idea, right? It's the same thing. You're acting out the hero archetype, the one that's journeying forward with the threat of death lurking at every corner, but confronting that heroically. That's it. That's it. We are the explorers of the unknown. And then we unconsciously understand, while watching the theater or the film, the bad guy. We know who the bad guy is, because they have a black hat, right? They have scars, right? Or they have tattoos, or the just the look on their face, right? We know the villain, and that clicks. It clicks, and that scar in The Lion King, right? It's kind of obvious when he lurks out of the shadow onto Pride Rock, right? He has the scar. His fur is darker. His voice, that Jeremy Irons does so incredibly well, it's just gritty. We understand, it clicks, because the villain doesn't emerge from the sun. The villain emerges from the darkness. That's why Scar walks out of the dark. It clicks. That's why there are scenes where Scar is surrounded by fire, where he's surrounded by malevolent, snarling hyenas. It resonates. We don't know why, but the hero and well, now we know, talking about it, but we see why that villain is, well, why the artists create those images the way that they do, and why those images have been repeating across thousands of years, right? We have unconscious universal associations to what the bad guy embodies, right? We understand by their demeanor and the colors and the setting. We understand that. You're like, oh, like the villain, like I was saying, is not one that comes out of the sun. That's the hero. But, a witch is not in a very clean, sophisticated, well-kept house, but a witch is associated with swamp, broom, long nose, deformities, right? Yeah, the swampy, dark underbelly where the children are too afraid to walk. And so we see this other character, the hero archetype, as this wise old man, right? That's God the Father. And God the Father is the hero archetype that is fully integrated and oriented towards the highest good. It's when you see Dumbledore and you see Harry Potter is Dumbledore. Dumbledore is Harry Potter. Harry Potter is just the child version of Dumbledore. That's what that is. They are both pursuing the highest good, and they are oriented towards the same aim, right? And that godly father archetype, like Gandalf, they represent stability, security, wisdom, humility, and this archetype represents the positive elements of culture. And that is culture in its positive form. It's stability, security, right? It wants the best from you to emerge. Scar is the Luciferian intellect, the negative, tyrannical element of culture. The Hitler, Nazi Germany, negative element of culture. And then we see this young Simba, right? And he's a funny character at the beginning of the movie because we see this unconscious id-driven buffoon, right? And id, as Freud coined, is the impulsive drives that we have, and sexual anger, lust, aggression, which I said twice. But we see Simba kind of being a hedonic buffoon, like all of us in our adolescence, right? And part of being an adult is to integrate and control all of the id impulses. Eric Neumann, in one of my favorite books, The Origins and History of Consciousness, says the story of the hero is the history of this self-emancipation of the ego, struggling to free itself from the power of the unconscious and to hold its own against overwhelming odds. And so we see that at the lotus flower struggling up the depths of the water, and then it blooms on top of the water, and it has Buddha sitting there on the surface. That's what it means. It's the struggle it's the struggle upwards, while all of the unconscious processes of kind of it's resisting that enlightenment, right? But that's why struggle is an important word here. It's the struggle upwards towards your higher self, to consciousness, right? And I struggled with that in my 20s. As you know, I talk about this all the time on the show, this struggling, the battling of my addictions, whether it was pornography or drugs or negative friends or sugar, the list goes on. Caffeine, another one. It's this struggle, this battle against my body's, well, desire, the drives that, like, the drives towards obtaining those things. So the id, the id struggles upwards towards consciousness, right? All of these drives want to be integrated. That's what it means to be to be individual, to reach enlightenment. And you want that. You want that because how you want that? Well, if you continue to play out all those id impulses, they lead you into bad places in your life. Sleeping around, or too much pornography, video games, drugs, alcohol, you'll find sooner enough that you'll fall off a cliff into suffering. Because once you get going and once you let these things control you, they take over and you wind up into terrible places. And that awakens you because you want to get out of the suffering, that you can't live in suffering or you will die. And, some people do because they'll never get out of that. And so the id is struggling upwards towards consciousness, and the superego, culture, right, presses down. And culture has two elements. Like we said, culture can be the positive or the negative, right? Culture, and what I mean by that is, well, culture can help you bring you out of consciousness or try and keep you there, right? And we see that. I was just watching Lord of the Rings, the Two Towers, and King Theoden, right, is corrupt. He's this withered old man who you can't even talk. And Wormtongue is just speaking in his ear, right? And he's corrupted him. He's corrupted him to the point where he's unconscious. He can barely move. He's not an awakened king, right? And that represents where culture ends up if new ideas aren't incorporated and it becomes tyrannical. And so it's an amazing image because we later see Gandalf ban Wormtongue from the kingdom, and King Theoden de-ages and he becomes, glowing, that's the right word, glowing, young, enlightened king. He's even more stronger than ever because he went from being a corrupt and unconscious king to now one that is understanding of what corrupted him. And you see this amazing character, take control finally of Rohan. It's amazing. And like I said, the id, it pushes you to consciousness because those impulses, they lead you to trouble. And that opens your eyes, which then leads to control over them. So consciousness is the hero with their eyes open. And the feminine, Nala, in part contributes to that in men. That's what women do. A beautiful woman to a man is very intimidating because, the beauty is a harsh judge to the man. It makes a man self-conscious. That's just how it is, right? You're around a beautiful woman, you can't help but think about how you look or what you say, or it just brings all of your faults and insecurities right up to the surface. Oh, I can be better. I could have a better job. I could look more healthy, fit, whatever, right? That's what beauty does. And a lot of people want to destroy the beauty because it's too harsh of a judge. That's the Cain archetype. That's the person that's like, to hell with that judge. I want to remain in my sphere of what I already understand. And as you know, the hero is the one that looks out into the unknown and goes, well, I know what I know, but there's a lot of what I don't know out here in the world, and I better go out into the world and find out what's out there. What's out there? And, what's lurking that is bothering me even. That's Siddhartha in the Buddha story. He encounters death, decay outside of his walled kingdom, and it haunts him. It gives him PTSD. And it haunts him to the point where he's like, I got to go discover why it's haunting me. I got to go look into it and how to transcend that suffering. And so Nala, she slaps him out of his kind of dopey ways as an adolescent, right? And she slaps him into consciousness, right? Like, grow up, take responsibility enough, horsing around and eating bugs. What kind of a lion eats bugs? It's like a child who's eating candy all day. It's like, put that down and, go do something. Go out in the world, scrape your knee, do something difficult. And so he does. His face hardens eventually. But I want to go to Eric Neumann again in this book. He says the awakening ego is thrust out of the maternal matrix, and that's the unconscious. The maternal matrix is the unconscious, and it finds itself by distinguishing itself from the matrix. And then later, as a differentiated person, revisits the matrix with which he originally lived, now as a conscious observer, to make sense and gain something of value from the matrix, from the unconscious. Amazing. That's Neo, from the matrix. I know, and that's really what the matrix is as you see in the movie, Neo is working in this office and he feels like something's missing. His life is boring. You see him fast asleep at home, right, on his desk, right? It's just, you just see it on his face. He's just like bored, and he's kind of living in he's living in the unconscious, and he doesn't even know it, right? He's living in the matrix and he doesn't even know it. And then he's pulled out of the matrix, right? He's pulled out of the matrix, and that opens his eyes and he becomes the one, right, as a consequence. Or it's Simba, right? He returns to the kingdom from where he once lived in unconsciousness, but now he's awakened because he went through this initiation phase with the baboon, right? The baboon finds him, and the baboon leads him to the puddle, right? That represents the unconscious. Water, as Jung points out, represents the unconscious mind because, like I said, you pull up the information from its depths. And the baboon tells Simba to look into the depths and to see what's down there. Simba looks, and Simba sees his father's reflection. The fully, realized individual, the wisdom that Simba has not yet manifested. And Simba's face hardens. It's the potential Simba hasn't manifested yet in his own self. And that's what happens when you do look into your unconscious mind. You see all the potential that you haven't manifested. You see all your flaws. You see everything that's holding you back. You see all of your fears. And this is what drives Simba to be awakened. And he returns to the kingdom, the matrix from which he first came from, as an awakened person. And, Neumann goes on to say, as ego consciousness increases, the vegetation symbolism, which is the unconscious, is followed by the animal phase, when the male experiences himself as a living, active, and savage animal. So when self-introspection occurs, like Simba looking deeper into his unconscious mind, he discovers the shadow elements of his psyche, the aggression he has yet to harness. And as soon as he realizes that, he harnesses that aggression and returns to the kingdom to confront the ultimate predatory creature, Scar. Because he's now awakened to the fact that, hey, Scar killed my father. Scar took over the kingdom of my people. I have to take on the responsibility. Because who else is going to do that? And you understand that as a viewer, because we all have something we're avoiding in our life. Maybe we do have to confront the corrupt kingdom of who we are. We're continuously eating too much fast food, or being lazy, or there's something you're avoiding. There's something out there. So confront it, like Simba, like the hero archetype. That's why these stories resonate so much to us. And that's where I'm going to leave you today on this podcast episode. Thank you, everyone, for being here, for being a listener. I'm so grateful. Let me know what you think. Leave a rating on Spotify. It only takes a minute to click a rating, and it'll help spread the podcast to more and more people. I am so thankful for all of you. And remember to rise above anxiety. I'll see you next time. My anxiety recovery program is available over at unpluganxiety.com. Included is the Releasing Trauma exercise. This is where you can walk through and release past trauma using an NLP-based audio recording by myself. That's at unpluganxiety.com. Go there to learn more.